Welcome everyone to Mettle Live, and today we have Christina Heller, CEO of Metastage, an XR studio that brings performance into digital worlds. She's also the recipient of the Advanced Imaging Society Award for Distinguished Leadership in Technology, and she's been involved in over 90 immersive projects. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you for having me, Nancy.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So tell us, what is volumetric video?
So volumetric video, or volumetric capture, is capturing a real performance from every possible angle using an array of cameras that are facing inward at the performer or performers like a globe. Basically the person goes out dressed in their normal clothes, does whatever they're trying to do, whether that's talk or dance or whatever the performance is. We capture it from every possible angle and put it through software. And on the other end, you get a fully 3D asset of whatever transpired live on stage.
So let's say hi. Let's see who's joining us. Hi, Rick. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining the live stream. Says hi, Nancy. Hi, Christina. So
hello.
We're used to seeing performance put into different kinds of digital worlds, like in video games. How is this different than something like motion capture?
So motion capture, which some of you might be familiar with from Avatar or like Lord of the Rings, Gollum, essentially an actor goes out and puts on a point suit and puppets an animated avatar to give it lifelike human performance qualities. Volumetric video is pretty different. The system might look similar, so I think that's maybe where some of the confusion or association comes in, because they both use a lot of cameras in a space to capture a real person doing something. But with volumetric video, the actor doesn't have to put on any special suits. They go out on the stage as they are, and you're not intended to create an avatar that is then puppeted later. What we're really trying to do is create a fully 3D asset of the true performance, whatever happened on stage. So if a ballerina goes out and does a pirouette, the goal is to get the cleanest, most high fidelity, three-dimensional asset of that performer doing the pirouette, which you can then put into a variety of different applications, whether that's AR, VR, or even virtual production.
So one way I like to think of it is, like in 360 video, you have a camera in the middle of your scene, and you're capturing the world around you. So in a way, this is the opposite. You're capturing a 360 world, but from the outside in.
Correct, correct. It's like the polar opposite, yeah.
Yeah, so Rick Markley is asking, how big is the capture volume at Metastage?
So at Metastage, our maximum volume is a 10-foot diameter circle. All of our 8 towers are on tracks. So depending on how much range of motion is needed, we can actually roll those towers in for a closer, more detailed capture, or we can roll them out to the full 10-foot. Our personal favorite of the volume sizes is 6.5 feet. At 6.5 feet, you can still get a full body capture. You have some range of motion, some movement, but just that closeness on the subject gives you so much detail in the face and in the eyes. It's definitely our preferred, but depending on what you need, sometimes, especially if you're capturing more than one person at a time, you need that full 10 feet.
So I'm sure most people watching this are aware. Hey, hi, Alexander from Paris, and good morning, Jonathan. He's saying good morning. So I'm sure our viewers have heard of the Intel Capture stage, which is 10,000 square feet. It's an enormous space. I think it replicates the size of a normal theater stage. Mm-hmm. So you can have a full scene that they're capturing. What's the difference between 10,000 square foot capturing a whole scene with multiple actors versus at Metastage carrying?
I would say it's almost like two totally different tools for two totally different jobs. In some ways they're similar, but in a lot of ways they're completely different. At the Intel stage, they're trying to capture as you said, almost like a football stadium sized performance. And so it lends itself well to like big, let's just say like a ensemble dance number. But what those cameras struggle sometimes to capture is the close-up detail of the person that they're capturing. They can get like a lot of coverage, but it does kind of, it still hasn't quite been able to to get the close-up, high-quality, capture that we have at Metastage. And it makes sense, right? If we're capturing in a 10th volume with 106 cameras surrounding that performer at that close a range, we're able to get a lot of detail. And then, so I actually have said this before. I think that Intel and Metastage could do a really interesting collaboration at some point where, let's say we were doing, a number from Hamilton, or maybe that's not the best example because there's only a few folks in that, but you could capture the primary actors or your hero actors at Metastage, get the really high fidelity close-up quality, and then capture all of the chorus with the Intel stage, and perhaps do something where the technology stacks really complement each other.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because I think if you're dealing with multiple actors and action going on, every single person has to be bang on their performance in that capture, their movements. But if you're dealing with one or two principal talents, the focus is really on their performance. So yeah, they have to be spot on, and you're focusing, like you said, on capturing a lot of the detail for that. You know what? We're going to jump to your intro to Metastage video, just to give viewers. And before we go, hi Jason. Oh, happy Friday, everyone. Jason says, and hi Francisco from Brazil. So I'm in Montreal right now, and where are you, Christina?
I'm in Los Angeles right now.
All right, so we have a world audience watching this. So we're going to jump over to the intro to Metastage video right now. Hold on tight.
Immersive media takes digital content and puts it in a three-dimensional space. So it's taking what you like about your digital world and breaking it completely free from the frame. It's really exciting. In the past few years, we've spent a lot of time figuring out how to make content instead of just getting to make it. Every time we would try to do something, it was like a science project. And so creators were constantly having to think about the tech instead of the content. That is the mission of Metastage, to make immersive content creation easy and reliable. And we're starting this journey with the Microsoft Mixed Reality Capture Studios.
Volumetric video is the idea of capturing a person from an array of cameras around them, and then creating a 3D model that's animated with that character that captures every nuance of their performance, but it can be seen and walked around and moved in on from any different direction.
From there, we process the data to create a high-fidelity, three-dimensional video compressed into a streamable file.
The processing is key, because getting a clean capture is a feat, but a lot of people can do that. Processing those files into a high-quality asset that can give somebody a face-to-face experience, but also use that same asset to stream on a mobile device, that is what makes the Microsoft system the best in the market.
So when we were creating the Blade Runner 2049 experience, we knew we had to have legitimate, authentic human performances. At first, we were terrified at the complexity of putting all this into an in-home app. In the end, it turned out to be very simple. The first day that we did the shoot, we got the results back. We looked at them in our environment. The developers, the engineers, everybody were just kind of blown away by what it was like to actually have a human performance face-to-face for the first time in an immersive media. That human presence brings authenticity to these environments and to the stories that we want to tell and the content that we want to create.
Any situation where you need to feel the presence of a performance, whether that's an actor, a musician, or even a training instructor, that's where this technology excels.
When I tell people that my company makes holograms, I sometimes have to pinch myself because it's just so cool. People are beautiful. It's time we put them in immersive experiences that way.
So, you're talking about clean capture in your overview, how that's super important, but it has to be compressed into something streamable for mobile or for AR experiences. How do you do that?
Well, so at Metastage, we use the Microsoft Mixed Reality Capture software, which is an incredibly sophisticated technology stack that the folks over at Microsoft Mixed Reality Capture Studios have been developing for the past 10 years almost. And I think what is really interesting and what was really smart about the way that they developed the software was they were looking for that nexus of quality and size. because I think they realized on the one hand that if you didn't have the quality, like if it didn't really look like the person you were trying to capture and it didn't have all the authenticity and the micro expressions, if it had that uncanny valley happening, that then in some ways they would have failed because it wouldn't be able to achieve success if it wasn't a high quality capture. Conversely, you also needed the file sizes to be small enough that they could stream on the devices that people are using, which are our cell phones and our tablets. And so they basically just spent, that time kind of creating a software stack that can meet those two aims. And I believe that it was when they realized that they had kind of succeeded on those two fronts that they decided to partner with production companies to bring this tech to the masses. And so Metastage is the first U.S. partner for the Microsoft Mixed Reality Capture system, and we're based in Los Angeles. And I would say that, since we opened in August of 2018, probably 80% of our projects have been for mobile augmented reality activations.
Okay, so how are businesses interested in this? Can you tell us what kind of projects that you've worked on primarily?
Sure. Well, the fun thing about working in XR, as they call it, is that the use cases are very broad. And so as you might expect of the many projects we've done now at Metastage, they've really run the gamut as far as use cases. But we've seen a lot of interest in music and sports. And I would say that in both of those areas make a lot of sense because we're doing 3D performance capture. And so, if you're capturing doing full body capture, seeing the way athletes move and being able to capture them in their entirety is extremely appealing. Same with musicians, they're always looking for interesting new ways to connect with their fans, to create intimacy, accessibility where, real life accessibility might be tough. And so, you can see some of our most recent explorations in the area of music in our partnership with Jadu. Jadu is a new app that Metastage helped create, and it is an amazingly cool, basically social media hologram app that allows you to engage and create content with your favorite performers or their holograms, and then publish that to TikTok or Instagram or some of the social media sites.
Very cool. I mean, user-generated content is huge right now, so being able to go into TikTok or Instagram, that sounds like a good business move for sure.
Yeah.
We have a question from Rick Markley. He's asking, I'll just click it onto the screen, could those captured assets be rigged for animations and performance capture? He's asking.
So the answer is technically yes. So when we deliver the final assets to our clients, we deliver in two file formats. You have the MP4 container, which is a proprietary codec that is compressed, audio is integrated, and then you use either our Unity or Unreal plugins to essentially drag and drop those files into your projects, and you're ready to roll. We also deliver the OBJ and PNG sequences. In case you want to put it through your own VFX pipeline, you can do that. You can give them back to us and we can re-encode it into the MP4 containers. The reason I mention that, though, is that you can rig these OBJs. So sometimes when a client comes in, we'll do the performance capture, which volumetric capture, I think in its the strength of the tech is in its authenticity. So, it isn't necessarily built to be rigged and puppeted because, to be honest, there's other methods of high resolution scanning that are, I would say, maybe more appropriate for those purposes. What we're trying to do is create something that really looks a lot like the live performance. However, you can also do a T-pose and puppet those OBJs. So sometimes we'll do that in addition to doing the capture for the client so they can play with it after the fact.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the point of this is to capture the performance of your actor and put it into the digital world. It's part of world building, as you said, and storytelling.
Yeah, and it's there are different tools for the job depending on what you're trying to achieve. Volumetric video is essential when only the real thing will do. When Barack Obama is giving a speech and you need it and you want it to be as close to the real life experience of watching Barack Obama give a speech. And you can tell the difference. If I was to create a scan of Obama and then have him or somebody else puppet that animated scan. Even at its highest quality level, you would still know that you weren't watching the real thing. Whereas because we're using video data, it is the real thing. It's just fully three-dimensional.
Yeah, I mean, this is more relevant than ever, I think, right now, as people are working from home, we're physically apart right now. So to have some assets, like digital assets of a real performance, that's amazing right now. I mean, we spoke about TikTok, Instagram, Unity, Instagram, but we have taken some of your files as well and imported it into After Effects using our Mantra OBJ import. I just want to show a sample of that because it's really amazing, because it would be ideal because you're controlling time and space, where you can put in the volumetric capture and then change your camera POV and your lighting. So I'm just going to show an example of a turntable move we did on one of the assets that you sent over to us. So there, just to fill in our viewers, what you're seeing there is an actual capture of Laura
Risotto.
Risotto. I mean, the detail looks pretty awesome. We were able to bring in the asset, and we can move the camera around, change the lighting. So we could take her performance and build a whole music video out of it, essentially. There's another clip I want to just show right now where we took the same asset and filled it. You can see there, we filled it with a flux animation, which is our 3D volumetric fractal flame software. So whether it's video games, whether it's cinematic, whether it's Instagram, everything seems to be moving towards volumetric, three-dimensional world building, as you're saying. So Alexandre Regeff from Paris, what is the max res of your textures with your actual system, he's asking.
So we can decide on the poly count and resolution when we go to process the video. But what we found is that after a certain point, you don't actually get more quality. It just becomes kind of noisier. So we recommend 60,000 polygons as our highest resolution. It's 60,000 polygons and 2K for the final resolution.
Okay.
We have 4K capabilities, but it's a lot more data, aka more expensive. So for almost everybody we work with, the 2K resolution is adequate for their purposes. And our standard is 20K. Like I said, we can go up to 60K, but then when you increase the poly count, you're also increasing file size. And then if we're doing like an augmented reality application for mobile devices, then we'll go as low as 10K, 1K, which if you've seen the Metastage app, we have a number of demo assets in there, including the Laura Risotto capture you just saw in After Effects. And that was a 10K, 1K export, and looks really great. Really, really great.
Yeah, so it's clean. So we have two more questions. One is from Jason, and he says you might, put it on screen, you might want to alter the character as part of the performance, transformation into another person, for instance. So have you had people ask about doing something like that, or how would you handle that?
Well, and that's what the OBJ sequences are for. So, if let's say you wanted to create a transition using the OBJ and PNG files, you can do that, and then let's say you want them to be compressed in the same file format as the original MP4 container. You can put it through the VFX pipeline, make the adjustments, and then if you want to give them back to us, we'll re-encode it back into the MP4 container. Or you could just work with the OBJs. They're just also a lot bigger. You're missing the kind of one of the key selling points of the system, which is the small file sizes.
Okay, and Rick Markley is asking, I'm curious, how would you handle things like eye contact in a game engine?
That's a great question, Rick. So we have a number of tools that were developed also as part of the Microsoft suite that we deliver to our clients. One of them is what they call a gaze shader. So it's a shader that goes into the neck of the capture that allows the head to track with the viewer, which is of course important, right? Because one of the things that was weird about volumetric capture for a while was, let's say I was having a conversation with one of these, holographic performances, but I took a step to the right. The actor would sort of look past you. It broke the realism.
For
so
sure.
The gaze shader is the solve for that.
Wow, that's pretty clever. But I think that would, once you see it not happen, it's pretty apparent there's an issue there.
Yeah, and I should also mention we've had some interesting creators working with things like branching narrative as well, where for instance, Asad J. Malik, who created Jadu, the app I was just describing, a year and a half ago, we did a project called A Jester's Tale with him, where it was basically an immersive theater augmented reality experience where these holographic performers or holograms would ask you questions. And depending on your response, it would trigger a different captured asset. And so therefore it had interactive elements. The little boy would ask, who read you bedtime stories growing up? And depending on what answer you would say, whether it was mom or dad, grandmother, grandfather, it would then, using IBM Watson, trigger a different captured response so that the little boy would say, oh, he did, or she did, giving it the illusion of like a genuine conversation, which was very cool.
Wow, that is cool. We have another question from John Westra. One question. How important is access to edge compute and rendering in 5G to the future of virtual to consumer volumetric capture and world building?
Well, it certainly won't hurt. We're currently operating without it. But the fact that these are, even with our incredibly, compressed files, they're still large. And if you wanted to do, let's say, an hour performance or something along those lines, you're going to need a lot of data being pushed through the pipes in order to achieve it. So I think that, volumetric and 5G is a natural marriage, and there's a reason why we're seeing a lot of projects coming from, Verizon, AT&T, people like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the technology is already here, so it's just a matter of implementing it. We don't have to wait for a new tech to be developed to push all of this.
We don't
all
have
of this
to
forward.
wait, but it will be useful
and easier for sure. We'll just see an explosion of content once that happens. Once there's a bigger network.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk about your asset loops. That's another thing. So if someone wants to use and try out volumetric video, you have assets that are for sale on your website. So
that's right. So in the Unity Asset Store, we've released a collection of background actors, background assets. We built them because there really was nothing like that, where you could have just a really realistic human performance in the background of your scenes, or in we really built them for architectural visualizations. That was the target concept when we made them. You're doing a beautiful, maybe you're doing an office building, and you want to put people inside that office space to give it life and scale. We captured, I think we released 50, and we have another 300 that are on the way.
300.
And they're real people in real outfits doing natural everyday behaviors. So talking, listening, looking around, walking, and they're not that expensive. I think one of them is $40. You can buy like 15 for $500.
Wow.
So the idea is that, it not only, I think, will be very useful to certain people in their projects, but it will also allow people that want to play with volumetric and get a kind of sense for it, an easy way to do so without having to rent the stage.
So Jason's asking another question. Will you be giving us an idea of price point? We're putting together a budget for a 360 stereo production now. So maybe you'd want to DM him on that. You can check it if you don't want to answer.
Team at metastage.com. We really try to make it work. I mean, it's not super cheap, but I also think that some people, it depends on what you think is expensive. I think it might be more accessible than some people think. And if we can try to make it work, we always do. So, please contact team@metastage.com. And the first thing we'll have you do is fill out a new project questionnaire that has all the info that we need to know. And then that kind of starts the conversation for consult.
Great. Can you repeat the web address, please?
Oh, just the email is team, TEAM, @metastage.com.
Terrific. We'll put it in the comments after. So we have another clip lined up to give people an example, an idea of what your asset loops are. So we're going to jump over to that and show that right now. That was great. We see your part of your performance library. So in that video that you put together, you had a limited amount of actors, but you have up to another 300 on their way?
So they're not 300 unique individuals, but it is 300 unique loops engaging in different behaviors. So we're in the process of processing all of that content. And we're actually really interested in these type of assets. What? Did you lose me for a second?
We got you.
I got blurry. Okay. I'd be curious to know what other things might be useful to people in this capacity. You know, is it stadium shots of people clapping? You know, what would you like to see in the library that will help inform our next round of casting?
And why do you think it's important for content creators to get into using volumetric video? Where do you see the future going with this?
Well, volumetric video is like the next evolution in live action capture. So it's building on the lineage of photography and video, and now taking that and making it fully 3D. So if you're someone that's interested in live action storytelling or even cinematography, I would at least familiarize myself with volumetric video, because it is another, like I said, it's a progression in the same line of art.
Yeah, I really think it's important to get artists on board to invent new vocabulary in this medium and kind of pull the whole content forward in this. So
yeah, and actually to that point, you know, if you're interested in starting to experiment with volumetric video and you're just, you know, a hobbyist or an independent creator, Depth Kit is a great tool to do that. You know, if you're interested, like I said, in just getting your hands on some volumetric, you know, production, Depth Kit, it could be a great little entry point without having to go to like a big commercial studio like Metastage.
Rick Markley had a question, also another question. Do you see volumetric capture getting to the point of real-time capture and playback for live applications?
Yes, yes. And in fact, there's a couple. It is technically possible already. You're still seeing a bit of sacrifice in the area of quality when you're live streaming. At Metastage, though, we are super interested in live volumetric, and we're just evaluating the right point to get in. You know, I would say that one of the kind of core tenets of the Metastage brand is quality, and so we'll be ready to step in when we think the quality is there. Mm-hmm. But technically, it is already possible to do live volumetric.
Cool. Roy has a question. Is it possible to export a GIF or other file that can be used in WebAR with 8th Wall SDK, for example?
Yes, and it doesn't even have to be a GIF. We actually have we've integrated the full 3.5-minute Lara Risotto performance into Eighth Wall. So I feel like Eighth Wall has done a lot of posts and sharing recently, and they've included some links to Metastage work. So check that out. Or, I think, if you're interested, you again, contact team at Metastage. We can send you some examples of that. But I'm extremely bullish about web AR, and I think that Eighth Wall and Metastage is a really nice way to do an activation without having to make your viewer download an app. Okay.
So we have a few more questions. Jason is asking, well, he's giving feedback. He's saying stunt professional assets would be good. And John has a question, random, 300 unique actor-driven personality and response profile. Given a number of actual actors, it would be interesting to see if an AI identification system could match overlapping actors.
Perhaps.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool idea. I think that the fun part about the work that you're doing is that people working in other complementary professions can kind of connect the dots and figure out new ways to new business opportunity.
I am honestly, I'm rarely the smartest person in the room. We try to serve our clients as best as we can and bring their visions and dreams to life. So it is, in the, like an example in the Jester's Tale, it's often our clients that come to us with these amazing ideas, and then our motto is just when in doubt, test. So we have a developer's kit we can share with our clients if they want to try to mess around with stuff. Again, also the library if you just want to download and own assets and play around with them. And then let's say somebody comes to us and says, oh, what if we had a trampoline? We'll say, okay, well, I have a feeling like my intuition says there may be some issues with that, but again, why don't we bring one in and see what it looks like?
Yeah. So, question. How can your business move forward in the new normal that is developing?
Yeah, so I actually think that Metastage is really well positioned to be able to do safe, hygienic productions in our new, COVID-19 reality. First and foremost is that, when an actor's on the stage, they are literally encapsulated in by curtains surrounding them. They're alone on the stage. I mean, yes, more than one person can be captured at a time, but I think for the next few months or maybe more, we're going to stick to only single person captures for social distancing. But you're on the stage, you're not even close to anybody. So the performer is safe. Then on top of it, we run the studio with a very small production team. We have a large studio space. So, as it is now, we've put tape on the ground. We've put X's on the stage indicating where people can stand. We've got hand sanitizer at every station. We've got eyewear and masks. So actually, I feel extremely confident we can run a very safe and hygienic production, and that and could actually be a solution for productions that don't know if they're going to be able to do what they operate how they normally would operate.
No, I agree, because one of the exciting things about this to me is in a way you can control space in post, control time and space. So you can do the volumetric capture and then put it in your world. You can have your camera travel around. So from a single capture, performance capture, you can let the artist kind of invent or discover what works, but remotely, so working at a distance. So yeah. I think it's amazing opportunity.
Yeah, and I want to really drill down on the realness and the authenticity of what we are doing. I think that sometimes I had one potential client who was like a public figure who got really nervous about working with Metastage because she had heard that that after she did a capture with us, somebody would be able to make her say or do anything after the fact. She was, I think, mistaking it with like an animated, a very realistic animated avatar.
Right.
That is not what we're trying to do. We are trying to capture the real person doing their work or their craft. And it will have with it like all of those nuances of their real performance, and is essentially just like a 3D video asset. So I think moving forward, we're moving into spatial computing, we're increasingly artificial kind of digital reality. Volumetric capture is bringing the real person and the real performance into these worlds. And I think that there's some, integrity there that is important to maintain. And for certain artists might be more appealing than, a cartoon.
I agree, because another way to think of it is we're used to, we know about pixels for flat capture or flat files, but here you're capturing with voxels. So it's like a 3D video.
Actually, we don't have a vox. It's not a voxel-based system with the Microsoft mixed reality capture tech. What we're doing is you use infrared to create the depth and the volume around the hologram, and from there we generate a point cloud. We then decimate that point cloud to as little, basically to as sophisticated and small a mesh as possible, and then assign video data to that mesh.
To the mesh.
And so it's actually a mesh-based approach, which is how they're able to get the file sizes so small.
Okay, thanks for correcting me on that. I think that's an important thing to know, exactly what you're doing there. You talk about how human presence brings authenticity. This ties into your previous point. So in these captures, you're trying to put the person there. In the scene. So the last video I'd like to show is a sample of a friend of yours who came to visit you from Mexico, and I think it illustrates that point pretty well.
Yes. Shout out to Alana K.
This is my friend Alana, who was visiting from Mexico City, and I offered to do a souvenir capture for her, which is something we do sometimes. She didn't do anything special or anything in particular to get ready for this shoot. I told her to imagine that she was in a crowd of cheering people, and I was amazed when the capture came out that it came out near perfect. So that in and of itself is pretty amazing about this particular capture. It's so clean. You struggle to find any artifacting or any issues with it, even though her shirt kind of hung over the back of her pants. The reason that this became a staple on the demo tour when people came to Metastage is because Alana, if you know her, is full of life. She's just a really beautiful, vivacious, goofy, amazing person. And I feel like when I watch this capture, I'm not just seeing a clean capture of Alana, but I'm really capturing her life essence. And especially this little jig she does at the end and that goofy smile, if you were to try to animate this, it would be extremely challenging to pull it off with any kind of, authenticity. And here, it was just such an easy process.
So in that, you're saying how it was an easy process. Like if you think about other methods of putting a real performance into a digital world, this seems to be the best way to capture that human presence.
Well, yeah, I mean, it bears mentioning that was a quick shoot and a quick process. We did not, I don't even know if we did multiple iterations of that. That's pretty much straight off the render farm. And Alana came to visit us, and, we just threw her on the stage in the clothes she arrived in, and she just did that cute little jig. So it can be quite easy on the performer, in particular with celebrity talent. You only have a limited amount of time with them, and they're not necessarily always going to be game for an exhaustive, complicated process. So we get everything ready so that when they show up, all they have to do is go on stage and do what they do. And then on our end, when we don't, what you see is really what you get. We're not, trying to we don't have a team of VFX artists cleaning these assets up so that we can showcase them on things like this. They really, that is what the product is, and it's really efficient. So we say, when you work with us, we'll deliver the assets within 2 weeks of the shoot. And the idea is that they are ready to go. We actually have had some of our clients that have moved from, animated rigging and now have moved only to doing work at Metastage because it's just so easy on their post-production pipeline. Like, we put a lot of energy into making sure the production elements are correct, that everything is volumetrically friendly from head to toe. But it's when they leave Metastage, I mean, depending on what their eventual application is, if it's an augmented reality, application, then their work is done, because now all they have to do is drag it in when it's done, when we deliver it to them.
So we're going to wrap up with one last question from Brian Williams. He's asking, are you working at a specific frame rate?
Yes, we shoot at 30 frames per second.
Okay. All right. So is there any reason why you don't go to 24 or 60?
Well, we have the capacity to go to 60, but what you're doing is you're doubling the data, which is already a pretty intense data load from 106 cameras.
Sure.
And so every time you increase the data, you increase the processing, you increase the cost. So if you have something that really needs to be at 60, that is something we can do.
Okay.
But again, I always encourage you to try out one of our assets at 30 to see if maybe you can achieve what you're looking for with that.
Okay. So, Christina, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. This was a really, really informative and terrific time spent with you. So stay safe, stay healthy, and take care.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to the people from around the world who tuned in.
Yes.
It was a real pleasure.
Thanks.